I do have a very serious question. I do want to bring this question up because I think you might have I know I have a hot take on it, or I think I do. Maybe it's not. But anyway, who do you think in the AFC West is going to be in that number 4 spot?
So it's funny. They asked me this on the other podcast too. I looked at the schedules early on, but I hadn't looked at them. So I just gave kind of what I assumed. Coming on day, I actually went and looked at the schedules and drew up what I guessed how these teams are going to end up. Now, it's what makes the AFC West really hard is I'm just going to tell you for my predictions, I made every team 3-3. I don't know who's going to beat each other in the AFC West. I think it's impossible to pick. No team, I'm guessing, is going to go 5-1. There might be a team there'll probably be a team that goes 4-2, team that goes 2-4. I don't see any team bottoming out, and I don't see any team like excelling in the AFC West. It's going to be too tough. So I right now, this is going to make you guys mad, but on the other show, I said I thought Denver was going to be in last. But I actually, looking at it, I think Las Vegas is probably going to be in last. Oh my gosh! And the reason for that is
what a trash take.
The reason for that is I just don't like Vegas's defense at all outside of the edge rushers, to be quite honest. I just think the middle of that defense is Swiss cheese. I just think there's nothing really there. I mean, the edges are really good. Max Crosby is probably my favorite edge rusher in the league. Led the league in pressures. He's an absolute menace coming off the edge. And then Chandler Jones is obviously a really good player, but he's an aging veteran who got 10 sacks last year, and 5 of them came in the first game. So you have to be skeptical there. Now, I think that edge rushing duo is just going to be really good, but I don't have a lot of faith in that secondary. Moreg looked good at times. And I don't know. The thing about the Raiders is it's really hard to predict them because you have to guess what Josh McDaniels is going to look like, which could be a really good coach or just what he was in Denver. So I assume he's improved from his Denver tenure. So I assume he's going to be relatively okay. But I don't have a lot of faith in him. I don't know how you guys feel about Josh McDaniels. But, I mean, I love his offense in New England. I think it works well. But I think it only worked well because of Tom Brady. Now watching him in Tampa, Brady makes that thing move. And then when Cam came into town, they tried to adjust it to a power run scheme, which worked relatively well, but it didn't end up having them make the playoffs, even though they have a lot of good players on that team. And then last year, obviously, they had the really hot start with Mac Jones. He made Mac Jones look good, but when they got into Buffalo, they got absolutely steamrolled. Just on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think the Cam Newton one, I think that's more an indictment on Cam Newton than Josh McDaniels. And here's why I say that is because I would agree that Josh McDaniels didn't have the greatest outing at Denver when he first coached, but he also had Tim Tebow as his quarterback for a while. He thought that could work, and it didn't. And I think we can all agree here that Derek Carr is an upgrade from Tim Tebow. I'm not saying that he's an elite company, but I mean, he's a significant upgrade to that. And I think, too, I think Josh McDaniels learning under Belichick, winning those titles, getting to learn under a Hall of Fame quarterback, because I am imagining he's coaching him as much as Tom Brady is teaching Josh McDaniels about certain things that work and don't work. So I think that goes hand in hand, and I think that information can be transferable. And I think the Raiders are a team that is going to impress a lot of people. Now, here's what I will agree with you. I agree. Our defense, majority of the time, is suspect. I think when Drew and I are usually talking about the Raiders, especially when we do our AFC West predictions, when we do the rankings, our question mark is always the defense. Can we pressure the quarterback? Can our secondary hold up? Because too many times we get to third down, we can't get home, and our secondary lets, somebody go by us, or, they get beat, or they just don't know how to play solid defense to where they're causing penalties. So we understand that part. And I'm not disagreeing with you that our secondary is slightly improved by any stretch of the imagination. We have an issue with Jonathan Abrams where we're not the biggest fans of him. He was great when he kind of switched into like a hybrid linebacker situation. But when he's playing safety coverage, we already know it's not good news for us. It's usually a bad situation on our part. But what I will say is I think closer to fourth place would probably, in my opinion, would be the Denver Broncos. And I would say like I'm almost teetering on Denver and KC, but I'm going to say Denver only because you have an OC that comes from Green Bay, and then you have Wilson that's coming into a situation. A lot of young pieces. If they're going to get it all together, some of these teams that are kind of getting these situations have been together for a while. Russell Wilson has not been with these guys. These receivers don't really know what success is because they've all been collectively injured at some point in time between the last 2 seasons. I don't know if that means that they're going to just catapult to top 2 in the division. I mean, Chargers, I would argue, is probably going to be 2 or 3. But I would also say, like, in my opinion, I think Denver's going to be probably the bottom team. Now, does that mean that they're above 500? Yeah, probably. But in my opinion, I think they're going to finish in the 4th place.
Yeah, I had Denver at 3, so that's where I have them. After looking at this, I can just do my rankings. After doing the schedule, I have the Chargers winning the division. I just think the Chargers have too much talent, honestly. I mean, obviously, I'm a homer, but there's been plenty of times to where I have not picked the Chargers to do well.
Sure.
But looking at all of their position, it's hard not to pick a team. It's basically a Pro Bowl team at this rate with a young quarterback who's only going to get better. Who's probably going to have an MVP season.
Well, let's hope so, because there was a lot of hope from last year, and obviously you guys didn't make the playoffs. And I'm gonna just be honest. You guys probably have like the second best quarterback in the entire league, but can that team translate it into getting into the playoffs? Which, his rookie season, he got on there by some injury fluke to Taylor, and I heard your guys' little take on that too, and I kind of agree with you. But he wasn't able. It made the team a lot more successful. The following year, they just got a little bit more. So can they turn it all around? And on paper, you guys look scary on the defensive side of the ball. Absolutely. But again, go ahead.
Well, what I got to say about the Chargers is, last year they ended 9-8, but a lot of people forget that. And so I said this on the other podcast. I was at that Week 18 game in Vegas. So
right.
I was there firsthand. A lot of people forget that everyone's like, oh, Herbert didn't make the playoffs. Oh, he sucked. Everyone forgets that he was a play away from making the playoffs if his defense had made any play in that game.
Actually, I'll do you one better. If your coach didn't call timeout, you guys would have gotten into the playoffs.
Now, here's my hot take. The timeout didn't do anything. The timeout is the biggest overreaction of all time because the Raiders only had 8 seconds on the play clock and there were 38 seconds left. It was 3rd and 8. They were going to run the ball no matter what. I mean, even if they were going to kick the field goal, they weren't going to throw it there. Why would you ever throw it and let Herbert go down the field again with 30 seconds left? I think that is the biggest, just my opinion.
Sure.
Because in the stadium, when I was there, no one even acknowledged the timeout. Like when we got home, everyone's like, oh, Staley lost it. But no one in the stadium, including all of the Raiders fans, no one even thought anything of it because of the situation where it was at. Everyone in the stadium knew that they were running the ball. I guess it was all kind of created by Chris Collinsworth on the broadcast, who got all mad about it. But in the stadium, no one thought the timeout was anything. And I still stand by that. I don't think the timeout did anything. If you want to criticize Brandon Staley, it comes down to going for it on 4th and 2 from your own 18-yard line in the first half. I think there's plenty to criticize him on. But ultimately, the defense just couldn't stop the run. That's what it comes down to. If they had stopped one run play, they would have been in the playoffs. Probably with the Raiders, maybe with a tie, or had beat them in regular. Who knows? Sure. But, I mean, the Chargers were one play away. And then to fix that issue, they turned around and got Khalil Mack. So it's kind of – that's where I, as a Chargers fan, I feel in like a weird homer spot to where I'm like, I legitimately think this is a contending team. But they were on the brink. I think everyone knew if the Chargers had gotten into the playoffs, they were going to make noise just because of how good Justin Herbert is. And so it's hard not to carry into the season, especially with the way the AFC West is looking right now, to think that the Chargers aren't in the front seat.
Sure. Drew, get in on this.
Well, I think you're both wrong on the 4th place team, but I'm going to first say this. The Raiders are not going to be in 4th place because exactly what you just said, Ethan. You were saying that the Raiders were running all over your defense, and in turn, that's why we got in the playoffs. Of course, you guys got Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack is not a run-stopping defender. He is a pass-rushing defender, and we know that from experience. And also, when he was with the Bears, and we faced him, we completely shut him down. He could not do anything. Our offensive line is actually a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for, and that's why Josh Jacobs has been able to excel. So I just want to say that our defense or our offensive line is actually not as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. But I will say this. I guess this is a hot take because you guys didn't even mention this team. I got the Kansas City Chiefs as the number 4 team. There is no way you lose your best receiver, your best secondary defender, and you are going to still win or even come second in the division. There's no way in my mind. I don't think they've gotten any better. I think they've gotten worse. You replaced Tyreek Hill for Juju Smith, and I think it's safe to say Juju Smith, his best years were when he was the second receiver, not the number 1 receiver. And he's struggled with injuries, so what's going to stop him from that? And then you're going to rely on Mecole Hardman. I'm not sure. Mecole Hardman was supposed to be the number 2 receiver for the Chiefs, and he wasn't doing anything. So yes, you have Travis Kelce. Of course, he's one of these dominant tight ends, but you're starting to see his age a little bit. Patrick Mahomes has started to. It looks like he's almost kind of regressed in a sense of. The pressure is really starting to get to him. You watch him in games, and that pressure really starts to bug him even more than it did his first year he was actually starting. So, and then I've never been a fan of the Chiefs defense. Everyone always pumped it up as this Chiefs defense is going, oh, this Chiefs defense is so good. You know, Tyrann Mathieu, they got Frank Clark. That's it. That's all they got. Chris Jones, yeah, he's a nice player. Frank Clark is a good player. Tyrann Mathieu was good, but Tyrann Mathieu sometimes in coverage was kind of suspect. Frank Clark didn't show up half the time, and Chris Jones was a better run stopper than he was a pass rusher. So in my opinion, I really think that this Chiefs team is not good enough. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, their running back, it's rare when you see him over 100 rushing yards. It is like a miracle when he gets it. I don't know if you play fantasy, Ethan, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is almost unplayable at times.
He was on my fantasy team.
Oh, God
so
bless
you know. So you know. But I'm being serious. I really do think the Chiefs are going to regress this much because you're right. The Chargers got better. I still think it's kind of hard to say that Derwin James is going to stay healthy. It just seems like he's always getting injured. But if he can, he's a solid. Obviously, he's a solid safety. He's one of the best in the league. And their secondary is good. I thought they weren't as good as they could be.
I mean, they added J.C. Jackson, which is massive.
Yes, yes, J.C. Jackson. But a lot of people have been, you can kind of see that there are sometimes he's really trying to go for the interception, and that's where you can get in trouble a lot of the times in the secondary. So hopefully the Chargers can kind of say, hey, yes, we're paying you big money, but we also need you to kind of swat them more than try and go after the pick.
As much as I see what you're saying, I kind of disagree when you got Derwin James behind you. I think you almost play that way better when you have probably the best safety in the league on the other side of J.C. Jackson. I mean, the Chargers are gonna intercept the ball a lot. They have a ton of playmakers. Plus Asante Samuel Jr., who was a rookie last year but showed a lot of signs as a playmaker.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally think the Chargers are going to be flying. I think that secondary is really, really good. It's really young. I mean, that's what Staley excels in. That's why they hired him to be the head coach. He's the one who made Jalen Ramsey into the best defensive player outside of Aaron Donald, probably in the league. Brandon Staley also developed Khalil Mack in Chicago into the kind of forced fumble machine he is now.
Yeah.
Brandon Staley's done a lot of good things. And he also developed that Denver secondary a couple years back that made Justin Simmons into a star. So I don't think it's the secondary. It's going to be the linebackers for the Chargers, whether they can still stop the run. That's still going to be a huge issue.
Yeah, I was surprised you guys didn't sign. Oh man, I can't think of his name right now. I think it was Nwosu.
Oh yeah, well,
yeah, he was
Uchenna Nwosu. Yeah, he was a good player, but I would rather have Khalil Mack than Uchenna.
Well,
Nwosu,
yeah,
to be quite honest.
Yeah,
in this division, you need all the pass rushers you can get
for sure. But that's why we have Kyle Van Noy too.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think he's out of his prime. But hey,
It doesn't matter. I mean,
he'll at least help the young guys for sure.
If he's your third edge rusher, you're sitting pretty fine. I mean, even if he's washed, if you're getting 5 sacks out of your third edge rusher, you still have pretty good production from a backup. But I do want to go back to what you said about the Chiefs, specifically what you said about Chris Jones. Chris Jones is not a better run stuffer than he is a pass rusher. This is a guy who in the interior had 16 sacks in a season. I think you are severely underrating the value of Chris Jones.
But isn't he injured though? Like a majority of the time?
No, I mean he's had injury concerns, but he's the best play. He's been the best player on that Chiefs defense. For
I think he's benefiting from Frank Clark. I really do. I think Frank Clark is always double team. I think Chris Jones is getting single coverage.
I think the complete opposite. I think Frank Clark sucks. I think Frank Clark is really bad.
Oh,
I
okay.
I don't think he does anything. He hasn't generated pressure at any effective rate over the last couple of years at all. There's a reason he had to take a pay cut of $13 million because he was going to get cut outright. Good players don't get their salary slashed in half. I mean, I don't like Frank Clark at all. I think he's really bad. I think the Chiefs defense, like what you said, I mean, it's never looked good, but they still make the AFC Championship every year. Like, as much as their defenses looked bad, they still find a way to get there. And then on offense, you're talking, they don't have Tyreek Hill. They added the second fastest player in the league in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. While he's not nearly the player Tyreek Hill is, he's still opening up the field along with, they have Juju Smith-Schuster. You have to agree that Juju Smith, while he's not Tyreek Hill, he's still a good possession receiver. And then they added Sky Moore in the draft, who's going to be at least average for them year one. Plus, they still have Travis Kelce. I do not think the Chiefs are going to regress as much as other people do. Now, their receiving core, their receiving core is really mid. It's just super mid-level. They're all just average players. They're all pretty much number twos. But it's Patrick Mahomes who's throwing the ball. And I'm not ready to write off Mahomes yet.
No, I'm not saying that Mahomes is absolute trash, but I do feel like with his offensive line the way it has been, I think he's been very rattled. And I mean, honestly, as a football fan, I really hope he gets out of that because he is so freaking talented. God, he's so good. But at the same time, I do see that I don't want to say like he's seeing ghosts like, Sam Darnold, but sometimes he scrambles out of the pockets when he's doesn't need to at all. He's kind of like sees like the pressure before it's happening and it like never happens. And it's like, what are you kind of doing there? And then he's kind of thrown off his back foot a lot more. And Brett Favre started doing that and he started throwing more interceptions. And Patrick Mahomes threw the most interceptions that he did last year. So it kind of brings me back to the whole Brett Favre years where Brett Favre, yes, he was this talented quarterback, but he turned the ball over a lot. And I hope Patrick Mahomes doesn't do that because I think he's way better than what Brett Favre ever was, but he's going to have to improve. And I don't think he did that last year.
And also, too, just add a little bit more to the Patrick Mahomes thing. I think this season will be a big question of how talented he is because an argument could be made that Patrick Mahomes looked as good as he did because he had Tyreek Hill there. I mean, arguably the fastest receiver could basically, when he gets downfield, even though that the play breaks down, he can find a way to get open because of his elusiveness. Not to say that Patrick Mahomes isn't still like a really good quarterback, but last season it kind of looked like defenses weren't falling for his out of the pocket, throwing it wildly. They were kind of expecting that now. Patrick Mahomes couldn't get away with as much as he did in the previous seasons. And I think defenses kind of saw that, to Drew's credit, pressured him, and he just would make these mistakes, throw these balls that used to work in the previous seasons and didn't. And if it wasn't for Tyreek Hill, how successful would they have been? Because a lot of these games where he was throwing it to Tyreek, that kind of saved them. And, when Kelce, yes, is a feature, but now that Kelce is probably the number one guy, if defenses scheme to that, yes, you have all these other receivers, to your credit, Ethan, they're all mid. So how much are they going to be able to step up? Can Mahomes do like what Aaron Rodgers does and kind of elevate some of these receivers into better positions, making plays? I guess this season will really challenge if Mahomes is that type of quarterback, or is he just a quarterback that was really lucky and had a player like Tyreek Hill? I think that's the question that we'll probably be looking into when the season starts in the AFC West. Don't you agree?
Yeah, for sure. But the one thing I will warn you guys about, don't write off the Chiefs too early. The Chiefs' schedule to start the season is really, really rough. Their first 8 weeks they play a team that was over 500 their first 8 weeks. But then their schedule really comes out. So there's going to be a lot of hot takes about how the Chiefs are if they're sitting at like 2-6 or 3-5.
Oh, for sure.
I would not.
The NFL loves a good comeback story. That's not a secret. So
yeah, so I would just be careful of Chiefs takes to start the season. Just like be careful of Chargers takes, because the Chargers are probably going to start 5-2, 6-1 because their schedule is so easy to start. Like they play Houston, they play Seattle, they play Atlanta, they play like all of the bad teams to start. So I think the AFC West is going to get a lot of hot takes at the beginning of the season because of how these schedules are orientated. So that's my biggest thing. Don't write off Mahomes too early. Just like don't crown Herbert the MVP just because he torched the Atlanta defense.